Champions Cup returns this weekend and it's getting serious. My name's Mark, let's talk rugby. There's a lot riding on this weekend's fixtures in the Champions Cup. We have teams who are pretty much on the brink of confirming their qualification. Teams who have one foot out the door, who won't necessarily be eliminated this round, but yeah, they'll put themselves in a position where it's going to be very hard for them to qualify if they don't win this weekend. And then we have lots of teams then who are jockeying for position within their pools. And we got one pool that looks like it's going to go absolutely down to the wire. So should be tons of exciting games. There's some great matchups this weekend as well. So as usual, what we're going to do is go down through each of the fixtures, talk about how the teams have done so far in the tournament, and then make a prediction that will most likely be wrong, but we'll give it a go anyway. Right, so we're going to start with the Friday games, and I believe we have two of them. The first is an 8 o'clock kickoff. All times are Ireland and UK times, so look up your local time zone. Most of the games are on Premier Sport, beIN Sport, Super Sport and Flow Rugby, so there's plenty of options in terms of where you're going to watch these games. And yeah, for me, I want to watch as many as I can now. Last game of the URC, I didn't get to watch as many games as I wanted to. Wasn't feeling the best, and I had another thing on as well. But this weekend now, I'm free, and I'm just going to watch as many as I can. But if we start with this one, as I said, it's an 8 o'clock kickoff. It is in the Stade Pierre Fabre, and it's Castres Olympique versus Bath Rugby. So two teams, who in the first two rounds are kind of contrasting performances in terms of one started well and then didn't follow up, and the other started badly and then kind of recovered the second game. So, Castres, they started off with a loss, and, that was to Gloucester first up. And, again, Gloucester, not really a powerhouse in European rugby, so to lose to them, not a great start for Castres. But then they do bounce back, and they beat Edinburgh quite comfortably, I think by 33 points. And Edinburgh would have been a bit disappointed in that performance, but fair play to Castres for actually bouncing back and getting a win, because we see a lot of French teams, they lose the first game and then they can lose interest as well and put out a weakened side the second game. But it was actually Edinburgh who did that, who sent over not a brilliant team over there, a lot of young guys there. And we talked about before how it's not like the Edinburgh team is full of players who have tons of experience in the Champions Cup. So it was a bit of a strange one for them. But Castres, you're going to beat who's put it against you, and they did. So they have one loss and one win, and Bath with the same record except the other way around. So that brilliant performance against Munster, where they just absolutely blew Munster away in the opening quarter of the game, and Munster never recovered. And at that point, Bath were looking like these guys could be serious contenders for this competition this year. They could still be, but the second performance away to Toulon, losing by 11 points, not really showing kind of the mark of a team who are kind of destined to lift the trophy this season. But for them, it's going to be, which performance are they going to produce if they get into the knockout stages? That's going to be the big thing, I think, for Bath. So, as I said, both teams, a win and a loss. They both won the home games and lost their away games. And going on that, I think in terms of if it was played at a neutral venue, I would back Bath to win the game. But the fact that Castres are home in this one, and the fact that they've already got a win on the board, I'm going to go for Castres to take this one. But this pool, Pool 2, Bath on 6 points at the top of the table, Edinburgh on 4 points in 6th place, bottom of the table, so only 2 points between them. So, winning here in this one does not guarantee the winner that they're going to go through to the knockout stages, and losing, like the team that loses, at most they're going to be 2 points away from 4th place. Like they could actually, lose and find themselves in 4th place as well. So there's still going to be an avenue for the loser to get into the knockout stages. But I feel, home advantage. I'm going to go for Castres to win that one. But I think Bath certainly will get something out of the game. Next one then, same pool again. You have Edinburgh versus Gloucester. And, this one, 8 o'clock kickoff as well in the Hive Stadium. And, this is an interesting one because two teams who don't generally, first of all, don't always appear in this competition. And second of all, don't generally perform all that well in the competition. Both of them opened up, in the first round with wins, but couldn't consolidate in the second round. So Edinburgh started off with a very impressive home win by 13 points against Toulon, but then they go away to France and they lose by 33 points to Castres. So, not really good second performance there from them. Gloucester, they beat Castres by 20 points in the opening game, and then they go away to Munster, and Munster, completely took them apart, really. And again, a lot of it is to do with both of these teams, what kind of teams are sending on the road, and what kind of teams they're playing at home, and that's why we're seeing such, not just with these teams, with a lot of teams in this competition, why you see such, contrast between home results and home performances and away results and performances as well. So, given that Edinburgh are at home, certainly think they've got to be favourites for this. I think Gloucester, though, will look at this game. They obviously looked at the Munster game and thought Munster are probably going to produce a reaction or performance after being so abject against Bath in the first game, and probably thought, okay, we can maybe look at that one and say we can rest players for that. And it's going to be interesting to see what to do here, because normally in this competition, if you can win your 2 home games, you're almost certain to go through to the knockout stages. But in this pool, because everyone is so close, I don't think you can just rely on that. So they may send certainly a stronger team, maybe not a full team up to Edinburgh. Just thinking that Edinburgh aren't the most consistent team in the world, and they can be got at, I think, a bit more than a Munster team who, other than that loss to Bath, had been flying high in the URC at the time. So you might see, Gloucester really giving it a go in this one. And Edinburgh, you feel like they should win the game, but Edinburgh fans will tell you there's no guarantee of that with them. But I'm going to back them. I'm going to say, their URC team, I'm going to go for an Edinburgh win in that one, but not with too much confidence, unfortunately. Okay, on to then the Saturday games. So let me pull up the next one here. So we have, it is the Vodacom Bulls versus Bristol Bears. And this is a 1 o'clock kickoff at Loftus Versfeld. And, you have the Bulls have been hugely disappointing in this competition this year. They've also been disappointing in the URC. They kind of started well and then they fell away. And in this competition, they haven't really arrived at all. They had one decent half of rugby against Bordeaux, in the opening game, and since then haven't really performed at all. Bordeaux came back against them to beat them well in the second half. Then Loftus, and then they sent a weakened team on the road then in their second game as well. So, and then Bristol have gone 2 from 2. And if we look, at those, as I said, Bordeaux beating the Bulls by 13 points down in Loftus. That's having been trailing, I'm pretty sure it's 33-22 at half time, so trailing by 11 points. So they made it up and then won by another 13 points on top of that as well, at Loftus. So that certainly would have stung the Bulls. But then, they send a weekend side off to Northampton and they get absolutely hockey there, 40 odd points in that one. So you have to think now, like with the Bulls, like, a lot of the South African teams, when they're in this competition, they kind of treat it the same way that French teams do, in that when they think that, any kind of chance is gone in the competition, they just send a weakened team. And that's what you worry about with the Bulls. But a home game, they definitely won't want to lose another home game in this competition, no matter what other things there are, because, there's no point which, like, resting. They might rest the first team for next weekend, but why would they rest all those players this week and then have them completely inactive, basically 3 weeks until the next time they play in the URC? It just doesn't make any sense to me at all. So I think we're going to see a strong Bulls team in this one, and I think they're going to give the Bulls a bit of a run, the Bears a bit of a run. But Bristol, scraped the win against Scarlets in the opening round by a point, but they got that win and it was a real boost to their confidence. And then they backed it up then by just absolutely hockeying Pau by almost 50 points in their home game as well. So, they're in a really good position in their pool now, where, they are up there near the top. And, they've still got Northampton and Bordeaux ahead of them, but there's an 8-point gap. They're in third place, 8-point gap down to Scarlets. So they know if they can get a win in this one, they've qualified for knockout stages, which for, Bristol would be an absolutely brilliant achievement for them to do, I think, because certainly coming into this, they would not have been one of the fancied side in the competition. Like, I think I'm pretty sure I said at the start that it was between Bristol Scarlets and Pau. Between them, one of them to kind of scrape through to the knockout stages. So Bristol could confirm this weekend that they have indeed qualified. I think they will qualify anyway, because 9 points is a pretty good return already. But if they could do that, this weekend, it really would kind of just send a message that, they're going into the knockout stages with a bit of confidence and maybe with a better draw than we would have expected had they, scraped through as we thought that they might have been one of the teams to do that. The Bulls, in contrast, if they lose this weekend, it's not necessarily all over for them, because they're on 1 point, Scarlets on 1 point, and Power on no points. So, one of those three teams is going to qualify, and, they may qualify anyway, just because the other two teams don't do as well as them. But, with the games that are on, you've got, Pau going to be playing those teams anyway. Somebody's got to win somewhere along the way, right? Between those three. So, I'm hoping that the Bulls kind of take this one seriously and therefore qualify for knockout stages. But then I'm a bit worried about how they're going to treat the knockout stages after that, given that, they're going to be away from home for the rest of the tournament anyway. They might just, they might almost as I'm not going to say as players, but as a may actually prefer to either drop down into the Challenge Cup or just be completely eliminated and focus on trying to turn things around in the URC. So it's kind of a tough one to call, but again, Bulls, they are a URC team. So I'm going to back them. I was hoping at this stage that I actually have a Bulls jersey to wear by now, because I ordered one at the start of December, but it hasn't turned up. So we'll have to see. Like, I'm trying to contact them and see what's going on with that, because there's been no update since the middle of December or something on that. But even though I don't have a Bull shirt on, definitely going to be supporting them, and I hope that they do produce a performance and just kind of, not necessarily restore a bit of pride, but it's more a case of just show these teams in this competition what the Bulls are about and what the potential is there for this team, because I do feel like if they absolutely took this competition seriously, they could be the way that they are in the URC, where regularly in semi-finals and finals they could be reproducing something akin to that in the Champions Cup as well. Getting into quarterfinals, semi-finals, possibly finals, lifting the trophy. But at the moment, we're not seeing that from them. But I do think this weekend they're going to have enough to win that one. Okay, on to the next game. I'm sorry, you have to forgive me for a second, because the official website always likes to just kind of go blank for a second. It needs to be refreshed. So next game is ASM Clermont Auvergne versus Glasgow Warriors, and this is it's a 3:15 kickoff at the Stade Marcel Michelin. And this one, you're looking at it like Clermont, they've lost their first two games. Glasgow won their first two games. Clermont, a French side, you think, okay, they're just going to roll over and concentrate on the top 14. But generally, Clermont don't do that in this competition. They respect the competition and they put out a decent side. And I hope that they do that in this one. I hope as well that whatever side that Clermont put out, that Glasgow can beat them, because obviously I'm going to be cheering for Glasgow as the URC team. I'm one of the teams that I really admire as well. And we look at kind of the performance so far. We have Clermont, they lose to Saracens by 37 points, and then they lose to Sale Sharks by 21. So no great performance from them so far in this. And then Glasgow beat Sale Sharks by 5 points, and then followed it up with that brilliant comeback win at home against Toulouse, where 21-0 down, they come back, they make it 21-all, and then they're able to go again, get another try, and win 28-21. And that was, for me, the performance of the pool stages so far. And, probably, certainly in a long, long time, the best performance by a Scottish team in European rugby. That certainly, as I said, in a very, very long time, given, not just given the fact that it was a Champions Cup, but who Toulouse are, and this Toulouse side as well. It would have been a case of halftime 21-0. Toulouse would have been thinking, how early are we going to get our bonus point, and when do we kind of switch players out as well to give them a rest, and then basically, because normally Toulouse, it's just a possession for them in the pool stage. They're not used to losing pool games, so all of that kind of adds up for me for it being an absolutely stellar performance and victory for Glasgow in that one. And I hope that gives them the confidence now to go away to France and then get a win there as well. Because another thing you have to think about is, when is the last time at this level, not Challenge Cup level, but at Champions Cup level, when is the last time that a Scottish team, has won both of their games against French opposition. So I hope that that's what Glasgow can confirm this weekend. And if we look at the pool, Glasgow top of the pool, the only team that with 2 wins out of their 2 games so far. Clermont bottom of the pool with no wins from their 2 games. So Glasgow win this game and they are in the knockout stages. They probably are in the, you would say probably are in the knockout stages already. Might have to pick up another point or 2 here or there, but you would imagine 10 points will be enough to qualify them. But if they win this, then they go into the final round with a home game, and they know a win there, and they're going to be the top seeds coming out of this pool going into knockout stages, and that will be a really kind of big carrot for them to kind of chase, and that I feel. So with all that said, I'm going to back Glasgow to win this one. I think it's going to be a really good. I don't think it's going to be like a close one either. I think they're going to win well, and we're going to see that team really kind of just put down a statement as well in this one. And I hope I'm right, and I'm hope for Glasgow's sake and Scottish rugby's sake as well that I'm right, because this is a team who in the last little while have looked like they really are getting into gear. They're getting into that form that won them the URC a couple of seasons ago, and you just hope that they can continue that on, because as the URC, I think we need more teams to be going deeper into this competition. It can't just be a case of us getting one team into semi-final, and most of the time it's been Leinster doing that. It's about time that the URC were able to produce, 2 semi-finalists, or maybe 3 or 4 quarter-finalists, rather than being kind of the, with the French dominating, and then, the URC and the English kind of scrapping out for almost minor positions in terms of just the volume of teams being later on in the tournament. So yeah, I'm going to go for Glasgow win in that one. Next game then we've got Leinster versus Stade Rochelais, or La Rochelle. I'm wearing La Rochelle's jersey, but as you know, I'm a Leinster fan, so you probably know who I'm going to be cheering for at the weekend. But I like this jersey. I got a couple of French jerseys as well, kind of over the Christmas period. So it's a nice jersey, but still, I hope I haven't jinxed Leinster by wearing it for this. But this is a 5:30 kickoff at the Aviron Stadium, and obviously a repeat of 2 finals from a couple of years ago between these two, and it's kind of interesting because both teams have had kind of mixed form in domestic league this year. La Rochelle, they absolutely hockeyed Toulon by 60 points or wherever it was, last weekend, but they got hockeyed by 60 odd points the weekend before as well. And then Leinster, we talked a lot about the struggles they've had this year. So, Leinster starting to come into a bit of form. La Rochelle, certainly great result last week, but whether, you can talk about them being in a bit of form when they had a really poor result the week before, is another thing, I think. But if we look at how those teams did so far this year, so Leinster kind of struggled to put away a Harlequins team, but eventually beat them by 17 points. Then they go away to Leicester Tigers and losing at half-time, and they have to, the last 20 minutes, they have to come back and get the win out of that. And we've seen a lot more dog in this Leinster team. this season compared to other seasons. We saw them actually against this opposition, La Rochelle, in a couple of finals where you could absolutely see that they were missing that dog from the team, that they weren't able, last 20 minutes, had to come up with a score to win the game, and they couldn't do it in either of those finals. So they certainly are improving in that respect this year, but performance-wise, they haven't been kind of at the tip top there. Some struggles in the set piece. Set piece has been steadily improving. The attack, has kind of misfired a lot of the season. Although last week, second half against Connacht, they got that going as well. The defence has been one of kind of their stronger points certainly this season, I think, and Jack Nienaber has to be given a lot of credit for that, because he gets a lot of, I think, unjust stick from people at times as well. That it's kind of a case of when Leinster haven't been doing well, it's like, well, it's obviously Nienaber's fault, and I absolutely do not believe that. I think he's a fantastic coach, and I think his efforts are beginning to bear fruit with Leinster as well. But there's no doubt that they're not in the kind of form that they have been in the last few years when it came to the pool stages. But still, 2 wins from 2, nothing to be sniffed at. La Rochelle, their form in the pool stages kind of mirroring the form in the top 14. Good win against Leicester, beating it by 19 points, and then they lose to the Stormers by 21 points. But that's no kind of slight on them, I think, because Stormers, for me, have been one of the form teams across Europe so far this season. They have been absolutely stellar. Top of the URC, haven't dropped a game at all between the two competitions so far this year. So, yeah, again, losing to them down in South Africa, is no slight on anyone, especially when you think that, first game of the season, Leinster went there and lost by 35 points to 0. So, La Rochelle certainly got closer than Leinster did against them. But with this one, Leinster home, well, it's kind of a home game, but it's the Aviva Stadium, and for me, especially when it's kind of pool stages, the Aviva doesn't kind of have that atmosphere of a home game for them, because I feel like it's they almost need an in between stadium for pool games, because I'm not sure how it is ticket wise, but I imagine that not the whole stadium is going to be open for this, and probably whatever part of the stadium is open is going to be full. But yeah, I'd rather see them in maybe a slightly smaller stadium, like it's almost 52,000 at the Aviva. So if they were in, say, a 30-odd thousand seater stadium and it was full for this type of game, I think it would be much better in terms of atmosphere, because I do think they kind of lose a little bit of that, that intimidation, as it were, in the Aviva when it's a pool game. When it's a knockout game and they can actually fill it, it's a bit better, but it still kind of feels like a bit more of an occasion for the opposition, and that can kind of work against you as well. But still, they are at home, in terms of, in terms of, at least it's in Dublin for them. And I think it will give them enough of an edge. And I do think that a lot of the issues that they've had earlier on the season, certainly maybe they haven't been completely addressed, but they've been addressed, I think, sufficiently enough for them to certainly be the favourites for this game. And I think, one of the big things for Leinster this year has been, yes, the back line is maybe misfiring a little bit, but the forwards have been really good in the carry in terms of getting them on front foot there. And because of that, you feel once that back line does click properly, that they will cause problems for teams. And I can see this maybe being one of those games where we see a bit of a statement performance from Leinster. So I'm going to back Leinster for the win in that one. But I can absolutely see like the quality of that La Rochelle team, no matter what kind of form they're in this season, it doesn't diminish the quality of the players that they have, and the fact that they have a really high ceiling in terms of the performance, and that they could come to Dublin and cause a bit of an upset. But for me, I'm not predicting that. I'm predicting a Leinster win. Okay, on to the next one then, and we are on to Pool 1. So Sale Sharks versus Hollywoodbets Sharks. So the two Sharks going against each other, and they've got pretty much identical records so far this season. So lost their first game, won their second game. Sale lose against Glasgow by 5 points, and then they beat Clermont by 21. The Sharks lost against Toulouse by 37, and then they beat Saracens by 5 points, and that performance against Saracens was really good from them. The thing about the Hollywoodbets Sharks is that they're absolutely full of talent, full of Springboks, but as a team, they're one of those ones where they're less than the sum of their parts rather than more than the sum of their parts. They don't really feel like a proper club team in that respect. That the cohesion doesn't seem to be there when they pull on the Sharks jersey compared to Springbok jersey, and also the fact that they send weakened teams up to Europe as well for pool stage games. I hope they don't do it in this one, because I believe that if they sent up a decent side, they certainly could have a good chance of beating the Sale team. But with Sale at home, I think Sale certainly should be the favourites for this, because they will have a strong team out. And if they kind of get a good start in the game, you could see them maybe building up a lead that the South African Sharks can't pull back. But at the moment, Sale fourth in the group or in the pool, and Hollywoodbets Sharks are in fifth. So 6 points versus 4 points. And the winner of this game, you feel, probably will stand a decent chance of joining. I imagine it's going to be Glasgow, Saracens, and Toulouse to qualify with one of these two. So this, for me, feels like a bit of a knockout game between these two. Yes, the loser will still have a chance in the final round to qualify, because Saracens are playing Toulouse anyway. So it means that one of those two teams will probably, they're both on 6 points at the minute, but you'd imagine the loser of those two will be either on 6 or 7 points at the end, and the loser of this game here will be, let's say it was the Hollywoodbets Sharks, they'll be on either 4 or 5 points, you would imagine, from this game. So they'll be right there. They'll basically be a win in the final round away from qualifying, but it still feels like, just in terms of setting up for, you'd rather be the team that won this game than the team that lost this game in terms of a chance to qualify. Again, I think in terms of who's the favourite, I think it's Sale Sharks, but I'm going to back my URC team, and I'm going to go for Hollywoodbets Sharks to win that one. Right, we're on to the next game then, and it is Scarlets versus POW, and this one is an 8 o'clock kickoff. It's at Parky Scarlets. And yeah, this one, like, both teams lost their first two games, and it does kind of feel like a bit of an elimination game. Again, it's not necessarily like mathematically elimination game, because both teams could, like, you could lose this game because the Bulls are also on a point, and still come back in the final round to qualify, because let's say Pau won the game, then they would move on to 4 points. Scarlets would be on maybe 1 or 2 points. Scarlets, though, if they win the game with a bonus point and deny Pau any kind of points, they can eliminate Pau at that point, because they would move to 6 points. Pau would be on 0 points, and the most that they could get in the final round would be 5. And the third place team, Bristol Bears, are on 9 points. So that's the one scenario I think that would eliminate one of these two from the competition. Scarlets certainly have the wherewithal to do that. They didn't have a brilliant first couple of rounds. As we said, they lost at home to Bristol Bears by a point, and then got beaten by Bordeaux by 29 points following that. Now, that's, again, no kind of slight on them, because there are very few teams that get anything against that Bordeaux Begles team. Then Pau, they started off, lost Northampton by 8 points. A decent performance there, but then they lose to Bristol Bears by 49. And yeah, you feel like that, if they do lose this game, that their final home game, they're not going to put out a great side in that one. They're going to maybe be looking to the top 14 beyond that. So yeah, I think this one is one of the most important games of the weekend, not necessarily in terms of the overall competition and who's going to win or whatever, but just in the fact that there are very few teams or very few matchups where something can absolutely clearly be decided in the game. And this one, you feel like especially Scarlets, if Scarlets can get the win, they put themselves in a great position to qualify, but also probably ended Pau's chances to qualify in any way, shape or form. So also, just talking about Scarlets from a URC perspective, they had their Champions Cup games, and then they went back into the URC, and they had a bit of a mini revival, a couple of wins, but since then they've kind of gone back down again. They've actually dropped back to the bottom of the URC, and maybe lost a bit of confidence because of that. This is a great chance for them to stoke that confidence again, and just get some belief back into that squad. We know there's plenty of talent in it, but kind of mentally there are certainly question marks about them. And if they can get a good performance and a good win in this one, I think it's going to have a knock-on effect as well in terms of their performance in the URC. And I'm going to back the Scarlets to win this one. Okay, on to the next game then, and that is Leicester Tigers versus Bayonne. This is an 8 o'clock kickoff. It's at the Matt Oil Woods, Welford Road. Could they not fit more words into the name of that stadium? And again, those two teams who've lost their first two games. Okay, so I did record the whole of this video, but apparently it cut out at this point here, so I'm going to pick it up and go through the stuff again. So yeah, I think these two teams, they're really just looking for something out of the game, because they're at the bottom of their pool on 0 points. The next team up is La Rochelle on 5 points, and yeah, if you lose this game, it feels like that's a big gap to try to make up, and I'm going to go for a Leicester win in that one. Okay, On to the next game then, we're on to the Sunday games. And for me, of all the days this weekend in terms of the Champions Cup rugby, if you're going to just watch one, this is the one to watch, just because I think some of the biggest clashes of the round are, happening on Sunday. So we start with Harlequins versus DHL Stormers, 1 o'clock kickoff at the Twickenham Stoop. And, Quins, they started with a loss, but, they came to Dublin playing against Leinster. They send over a kind of, a young side, and they come away with a bonus point, try bonus point out of the game. They made Leinster work really hard for that win as well. And, I think that bonus point, coupled with the fact that they then, hockeyed Bayonne by 54 points in round 2 to be on 6 points, has put them in a great position in terms of qualifying for the knockout stages. But then they're playing against DHL Stormers, for me, is, they are one of the form teams across the whole of Europe so far this season. 8 from 8 in the URC, 2 from 2 in this competition. And, a lot of teams haven't even got close to them either. And, the defense has been fantastic. Their, attack has been good. Set piece good as well. Just every kind of facet of the game doing well for them. And, it hasn't just been all sailing through games either. They've had to dig it out on a couple of occasions. They're able to do that too. So, it feels like we could have a South African team who are going to make a proper impact on this competition this year. And I hope that they continue that on, because it feels like that's what the Champions Cup is missing. Some real buy-in from South African teams and South African fans. I think the Stormers potentially could deliver that this year. And we look at, the Stormers' results so far. So, played against Bayonne, they beat them by 9 points. And then they followed up 21-point win down in South Africa against La Rochelle. So they've beaten both French teams so far in the pool. And they've got the 2 English teams left to go. And I think, you look at the pool, and Stormers, they've had that brilliant start so far, but if they lose this one, Quins are going to leapfrog them almost certainly, unless it's 4 match points to 1, then they're both on 10 points. But you would imagine that would, that Quins probably will leapfrog them if they win. And it feels like, for all Stormers brilliant play this year, that wouldn't be the reward that maybe they deserve from it either. Yes, if they don't perform in this game, then they deserve that, like they deserve to lose. But yeah, it feels like everything that's led up to now, if they continue with the form, that they should be looking at a win in this one. The thing as well, though, is I think in this game, we're probably going to see both teams come away with try bonus point, because Quins have that thing of being able to score tries and bursts, 2 and 3 tries in a 5 or 10 minute period in a game. So they never really feel like they're out of a game. And that's what, Stormers have to guard against as well, is that they can't, certainly they have the ability to have, let's say, a 7 or 10 point lead, 11 point lead, something like that, and be able to control the game all the way through and kind of hold Quins at that arm's length type of thing, maybe 1 to 1.5 scores ahead. But there is always that possibility that if Quins hit a bit of a purple patch, they can turn a lead like that around very quickly. And I think that's something that they've got to guard against. But you look at it and you think, if both teams play to their potential, then Stormers win. And Stormers URC team, I'm going to back them for the win in that game. On to the next one then, we have RC Toulon versus Munster Rugby, 1 o'clock kickoff at the Stade Felix Mayol. And two teams in very similar position, lost their opening game, won their second one. They're in a pool now where winning in this round won't qualify you, but it will certainly put you in a better position than the loser. But as well, the loser is not going to be out of it, because we're talking about a pool that where the top team was 6 points and the bottom team was 4 points. So there still will be a chance in the final round for whoever loses this. But again, you'd rather be the team that comes away with the win. And Toulon, they started with defeat against Edinburgh by 13 points. Brilliant performance by Edinburgh in that one. And then they bounced back. They beat a bad team that were on a great run of form by 11 points, and that just shows the quality of that Toulon team. They are coming off the back of a heavy defeat against La Rochelle in the top 14, but that was an away game in the top 14, and that can happen with the quality, the disparity in the quality of home sides in terms of selection compared to away sides in the top 14 as well. So they're home at this one. They're expecting a strong team to come from them. Munster then, they started a pool. That loss against Bath got blown away in the first kind of 20 odd minutes of the game, and the game was done by 30 minutes. And there was no real route for them back into it. And then they respond then with a brilliant performance against Gloucester. I think it was 31 points to 3, certainly a 28-point margin in the game. And that's kind of what Munster do, right? Is I think they're one of those teams that they benchmark themselves against their performances in this competition more so than I think domestically. And obviously in recent years they haven't been up at that level where they're regularly getting into quarterfinals, semi-finals, etc. But that's what their ambition is in this competition. And if you looked at the start of their season, certainly in the URC, you would have thought that that's a possibility for them this year. But they've had a dip in form recently. They've got to rediscover it now if they're going to get into the knockout stages of this. This is one of these ones where it's head versus heart. Head is saying Toulon should win it. Heart is saying Munster. I'm going to go with my heart, and I'm going to go for a Munster win in that one. Then we're on to the final two games of the weekend, and certainly two of the biggest games of the weekend. I think that the standout fixture, Union Bordeaux Begles versus Northampton Saints, 3:15 kickoff in that one. It's at the Stade Chambon Delmas. I'm sure I absolutely butchered the name of that stadium, so apologies for that. But yeah, two teams who have been in great form in this competition this year, but they've been in great form in this competition in recent years as well. If you think in terms of the fact that it's a repeat of last year's final, it was an 8-point difference between the teams in that final as well. And also just think about in terms of the last couple of seasons, they've been standout teams over those as well. For me, if we're to talk about, let's say, the 4 teams over those last 2 seasons that have really stood out in this competition, obviously these two, and then I think Toulouse and Leinster would be the other 2 teams that I put in there. But these 2 guys right up there with anyone in Europe over the last couple of seasons. And, you've got the defending champions at home, but you've got Northampton Saints who, sometimes it feels like against all the odds, are able to go toe-to-toe with the likes of Bordeaux or Leinster or whoever, and stick in a game and give themselves a chance and then they produce that little bit of magic that can get their noses in front in a game, and a lot of time they then have the wherewithal to bring it home. And certainly, comparing Saints against any other English team in the last couple of seasons in this competition, they're streets ahead of them, and they've kind of been that English representative that have been up there, similar to Leinster, keeping pace with the big guns of the French top 14 over those last couple of seasons. And that all of that gives huge weight, I think, to this game. You've got these two teams, they've won the first two games, they're up there top of the pool, both on 10 points, so perfect starts to the competition for them. We look and we see, Bordeaux, they started with that win down in Loftus against the Bulls, where they came back from 11 points down to win by 13 points. And they followed up then with a 29-point victory against the Scarlets. And then Northampton, maybe not as impressive in beating Pau by 8 points, but still, a really good victory from them to start off. And then they demolish a weakened Bulls side by 45 points. So, again, both teams in great form coming into this. And you think that, for me, it's not just about the win in this between these two. There's a lot more at stake, I feel, because you think that, Bristol are the other team in the pool who've won 2 games down on 9 points. But you feel that the winner of this game will almost certainly go on to top the pool. And the fact that, these two have 10 points, and the only other team that have had a perfect start in the competition so far over the first 2 rounds is Glasgow, also on 10 points. Obviously, other teams have won 2 games, but I'm talking about, 5-point bonus point victories in both games, getting 10 points. So, in terms of top seeds, you feel like the winner of this game will very likely go on to be one of the 2 top seeds in the knockout stages, which means if they do progress, it's going to be home fixtures in round of 16, quarterfinal, semi-final, so basically at home all the way up to the final. And that's going to be a big kind of carrot, I think, for either of these teams to go after in this game. The losing team then, will probably end up being an away side in the round of 16, they'll be a home side in the round of 16, and if they win through that, they'll be an away side in the quarterfinal. And thinking about the potential teams to be away in the quarterfinals, the loser of this, if that's how it does turn out, because it's not guaranteed, but if that's how it did turn out, you feel like the loser of this would be the team to avoid in those quarterfinals, because I think either of these teams would have that confidence of, we're away in a quarterfinal, but we can come to your place and we can win, and we can progress. We know how to get to semi-finals and finals in this competition over the last few seasons. So I don't think that will deter the loser. But again, there's a big prize there for the winner of this. And you look as well, both teams can be free scoring, and both teams have that ability, again, to score in bursts, so that they don't really feel like they're completely out of a game. But home advantage, I think, is going to be the deciding factor. So I'm going to go for a Bordeaux win in that one. And then that brings us to the final game of the weekend. And looking at this one, sorry, let me pull it up here. We've got Saracens versus Toulouse, and I think maybe go back maybe 5 or 6 seasons. Saracens in their pomp. Toulouse, no matter what season, Toulouse are always competitive in this competition anyway. But I think if you went back to that kind of era, this would be the fixture of the weekend. But I think given what's happened over the last 2 seasons, for now, Bordeaux versus Northampton, I think is, as big as it's probably going to get, in these pool stages. But, don't let that take anything away from this particular game, because this is still a very big game. And this one, it's at the Stonex Stadium. It's the final game of the weekend, and 5:30 kickoff. And I think this is just a great way to end the weekend, because I think it's going to be a fairly entertaining game. It's one of those ones where, it can be a bit of a contrast of styles, and the game could go either way. It could be high scoring, it could be low scoring, but you feel like there's certainly going to be some drama in it, and plenty of entertainment in it as well. And, we look at how the teams have gone, very similar. Saracens, they win against Clermont first up, a very impressive win there. And then they lose against Hollywoodbets Sharks by 5 points down in South Africa. Toulouse then, they beat Hollywoodbets Sharks by 37, and that was, again, a very impressive performance from them. But we're used to seeing that. What we're not used to seeing is they go to Glasgow, they're winning by 21 points to 0 at half time, and you're thinking it's just a typical Toulouse thing. It's what Toulouse do, right? They just cruise through the pool stages, and kind of steamroller everybody that gets in their way. And Glasgow are just the latest victims of that. But Glasgow had other ideas, and to me produced a performance for the ages, really, in getting themselves level and then going again to win, and kind of showed a vulnerability to this Toulouse team that we're not used to seeing. And certainly that's something that Saracens will look to in terms of trying to get a win. I don't think Saracens are not going to stand toe to toe with them and go, okay, let's just have at it, because in that scenario, I think Toulouse win that kind of game. Saracens, they're an abrasive team. They get under your skin. They knock you off your stride. That's what they're going to want to do to this Toulouse team. Make it uncomfortable for them, make it messy. And I think that's the route to victory for them. And I think because of that, I think it's a close call, because Saracens, compared to other seasons, I think they're certainly in better form this year than they have been previously coming into this. They've in the last kind of couple of seasons, they've looked like shadows of the side that won this competition, previously. But this year, they seem to have a bit more about them, and certainly they're going to need that facing a Toulouse side who, I think, of almost any team in Europe, have that thing of they don't care, whether it's going to Thomond Park or the Stonex Stadium or the Aviron or wherever, that they feel like, they can come to your place and they can turn you over. And that's what they're going to feel like, going to London to play Saracens. But for some reason, I just have an inkling that Saracens are going to win this one. So I'm going to back them for the win in that game. And yeah, probably again, if I was smart, I would just pick Toulouse, because everyone would pick Toulouse in this scenario, right? But for whatever reason, I have an inkling towards Saracens, so I'm going to go for Saris in that one. And I think, in terms of the pool, I think, it's not guaranteed that both of these teams are going to qualify, but I think both of these teams, whoever loses, I think, is going to be able to produce a performance in the final round to get themselves through. Now, I think in terms of going into that, I think Saracens will have the more difficult task. They'll be playing Glasgow, and they're going to be away. But Toulouse at home, you expect to win in that final round. But yeah, for this one, as I said, I'm going to go for Sarries, and that's a look ahead to the third round of the Champions Cup. Want to wish you all Happy New Year. I hope it's a fantastic year for you. I hope that whoever you're cheering for this weekend, that it's a fantastic weekend for you, and that you enjoy the rugby feast that is ahead of us.